The coffee shop smelled like burnt espresso and broken promises. I sat in the corner booth, the same one where Sarah and I used to spend Sunday mornings, tracing the rim of my chipped mug with my thumb. The ceramic was cold now, like everything else in my life had become over the past 72 hours. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. Joshua, I need you to understand this isn't about love, Sarah had said, her manicured nails drumming against the table between us. Those nails, perfectly shaped, painted the color of expensive wine, were new. Marcus had paid for them. Marcus paid for everything now. I'd looked up at her, this woman I'd planned to marry, and saw a stranger wearing her face. Then what is it about? Reality. She'd pulled her hand away when I reached for it. I'm 28 years old. I can't keep living in a studio apartment, splitting grocery bills, wondering if we'll ever afford a real vacation. Marcus offers stability. He offers a future. I offer love. Love doesn't pay the rent, Josh. Her voice had cracked then, just slightly, and I'd wanted to believe it meant something. You work at a hardware store. You drive a 15-year-old Honda. You're a good man, but good doesn't put food on the table or send kids to college or... We don't even have kids. Exactly, and we never will. Not like this. She'd stood up, smoothing down her dress. Also new, also expensive, also Marcus. I'm sorry. I truly am. But I choose security over struggle. That conversation played on repeat in my mind as I sat alone 3 days later, watching the steam rise from coffee I couldn't taste. The door chimed, and I glanced up out of habit, half hoping and half dreading it might be her, coming back to say she'd made a mistake. Instead, my uncle walked in. Thomas Turner moved through the world like he owned pieces of it, which I'd recently discovered he actually did. At 63, he carried himself with the quiet confidence of old money, though he'd always dressed down around me. Today was different. Today he wore a suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary, and his expression carried something I'd never seen before. Urgency mixed with what might have been guilt. Joshua, he slid into the booth across from me without asking. We need to talk. Uncle Thomas. Didn't expect to see you in this neighborhood. I managed a weak smile. Slumming it. He didn't return the smile. Instead, he placed a leather folder on the table between us, the kind lawyers used for important documents. I've made a terrible mistake. Several, actually, and I need to correct them before they destroy you further. My stomach tightened. What are you talking about? Thomas opened the folder, revealing documents dense with legal terminology and numbers that didn't make sense at first glance. Your father, my brother, was a complicated man. Brilliant, secretive, paranoid about wealth corrupting character. He tapped one of the pages. When he died 10 years ago, he left everything in a trust. For you. To be managed by me until you turned 18, at which point you'd gain access. Dad was a teacher. He didn't have anything to leave. That's what everyone thought. That's what he wanted everyone to think. Thomas leaned forward, his voice dropping. Your father invented a water filtration system in his garage. Something about removing microplastics at a molecular level. He patented it quietly, sold it to 3 major corporations, and invested the proceeds wisely. Very wisely. The coffee shop noise faded into background static. How wisely? The trust is currently valued at $83 million. Thomas pushed the documents toward me. And I've been hiding it from you for 7 years. The number didn't land at first. It was too large, too disconnected from my reality of clearance rack clothes and coupon clipping and that goddamn Honda that needed a new transmission I couldn't afford. You're joking. I've never been more serious. He pulled out another document, this one with my name at the top in bold letters. Your father left specific instructions. He was terrified of you becoming lazy, entitled, disconnected from real work and real people. So he added a condition. I was to keep the trust secret until you'd proven yourself, established a career, built character, demonstrated you wouldn't be destroyed by sudden wealth. Proven myself? My voice came out sharper than intended. I've been working since I was 16. I put myself through community college. I show up every day to a job that pays barely above minimum wage. And you, the realization hit like a physical blow. You've been watching me struggle. For 7 years. Thomas's face crumpled. I thought I was following your father's wishes. I thought I was protecting you. But lately, I've watched you sacrifice and scrimp and lose the woman you loved because she didn't know you had options. And I realized. He stopped, collecting himself. I realized your father was wrong, or I was wrong about what he meant. Character isn't built through unnecessary suffering. I stared at the documents, at numbers with so many zeros they looked fictional. 83 million. More than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. Enough to change everything about my existence in an instant. Sarah left me 3 days ago, I said quietly. She's with someone named Marcus. He owns car dealerships. He bought her a new wardrobe and probably a new life. I know. That's why I'm here. Thomas reached across the table, his hand hovering near mine but not quite touching. I'm sorry, Joshua. I'm so deeply sorry. I should have told you when you turned 18. I should have trusted you to handle it. Instead, I let you believe you were ordinary. I am ordinary. No. His voice was firm. You're extraordinary. You've built a life on integrity and hard work despite having no idea you had a safety net. Most people with your wealth would never have worked a day at that hardware store. They'd never have learned resilience or humility, or how to fix a leaking pipe at 3 in the morning for a grateful neighbor who paid you in homemade cookies. I thought of Mrs. Chun on the 4th floor, her grateful smile when I'd fixed her kitchen sink last month. The cookies had been chocolate chip, still warm. What happens now? I asked. Thomas tapped the folder. Now you sign these papers and the trust transfers to your full control. You can quit your job today, buy a house, travel the world. Or, he paused, studying my face, or you can take time to think about who you want to become with this knowledge. Does Sarah know? No one knows except me, you, and the lawyers who managed the trust. Your father was obsessive about privacy. I pulled the documents closer, scanning pages of legalese that basically confirmed my uncle's story. Investments in tech companies, real estate portfolios, dividend-generating stocks. My father had built an empire from a garage invention and hidden it like a shameful secret. He didn't trust me, I said, the hurt fresh despite my father being dead a decade. He didn't trust wealth, Thomas corrected. He grew up poor, made money suddenly, and saw how it changed people around him. He wanted you to know who you were before money told you who to be. Well, now I know. I'm the guy whose girlfriend left him for a car salesman because she thought I'd never amount to anything. Thomas winced. Are you going to tell her? The question hung in the air between us, heavy with implication. I could call Sarah right now, show her the documents, watch her face transform from pity to shock to regret. There was a dark appeal to that fantasy. The dramatic reveal, her tearful apology, Marcus suddenly looking like the poor choice. No, I said finally. If she comes back, it needs to be for the man she left, not the money she didn't know about. That's remarkably mature. Or remarkably stupid. I closed the folder. Can I think about this? Not the signing I'll sign, but everything else. What I do with it. Take all the time you need. Though I'd suggest hiring a financial advisor quickly. The trust generates about $4 million in interest annually. That money needs managing. $4 million in interest. I made $32,000 a year at the hardware store. We sat in silence for a moment, the magnitude of the conversation settling over us like snow. Finally, Thomas stood, adjusting his suit jacket. For what it's worth, I think your father would be proud of the man you've become. I know I am. After he left, I sat alone with the leather folder, watching the afternoon light shift through the coffee shop windows. My phone buzzed. A text from my coworker Derek asking if I could cover his shift tomorrow. Before today, I would have said yes without thinking. I needed the hours. Now I didn't need anything, except to figure out what kind of person I wanted to be with $83 million and a broken heart. The hardware store smelled like sawdust and paint thinner, familiar and grounding in a way nothing else felt anymore. I'd come in for my Tuesday morning shift despite everything. Despite the documents I'd signed the night before that made me legally rich enough to buy the entire strip mall the store occupied. Josh! Thank God. Derek rushed over, his red vest askew. Mrs. Patterson is here asking about deck stain again. And you know I can't tell the difference between semi-transparent and solid. North side or south side deck? I asked automatically, falling into the rhythm of customer service I'd perfected over 6 years. Does it matter? Sun exposure matters for everything. I grabbed my vest from the break room, suddenly aware that this might be one of the last times I put it on. The thought felt both liberating and terrifying. Mrs. Patterson was studying paint chips with the intensity of someone defusing a bomb. She looked up when I approached, her face flooding with relief. Joshua! Finally! These young people don't understand the importance of UV resistance. North side or south side, Mrs. Patterson? South. Gets direct afternoon sun. Then you want a solid stain with UV inhibitors. It'll last you 8 to 10 years instead of 3. I guided her to the right section, explaining the difference between oil-based and water-based options while her husband trailed behind us, clearly bored but patient. This was what I'd been doing with my life while sitting on a fortune, helping retirees choose deck stain, explaining to young couples the difference between drywall screws and wood screws, teaching teenagers how to properly use a level. Felt important when I started. Felt honest. Now it felt like I'd been playing a role in a play where I didn't know the real script. You're quiet today, Mrs. Patterson observed as I rang up her purchase. Girl troubles. I managed to smile. Something like that. She'll come around. A nice young man like you? She'll realize her mistake. She patted my hand with her weathered one. And if she doesn't, she wasn't worthy of you anyway. The kindness hit harder than I expected. This woman had no idea I could buy her house in cash without denting my bank account. To her, I was just Josh from the hardware store, helpful and reliable and ordinary. Maybe that was the person I actually was. My shift ended at 3. I drove my ancient Honda home, listening to it rattle over every pothole, suddenly seeing it differently. Not as a badge of poverty, but as a choice I'd never known I was making. I could have had a new car any time in the past 7 years. I could have had a house, a real vacation, the security Sarah had craved. Instead, I'd had authenticity. Every friendship, every interaction, every relationship had been real, built on who I was rather than what I had. The studio apartment felt smaller when I walked in. One room serving as bedroom, living room, and dining room. A kitchenette barely large enough to turn around in. Furniture from thrift stores and hand-me-downs. I'd never minded before. Sarah had minded. Sarah had counted every compromise, every sacrifice, tallying them up until the sum total equaled leaving. My phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Turner? This is Rebecca Chen from Whitmore Financial Management. Your uncle provided your contact information regarding estate planning and investment oversight. It was starting. The machinery of wealth grinding into motion. Mr. Turner? Are you there? Yeah, sorry. This is all very new. I understand. Her voice was professional but warm. I've worked with several clients who've come into sudden wealth. The adjustment can be disorienting. Would you like to schedule a meeting? I can explain your current portfolio, discuss options for expansion or consolidation, and answer any questions you might have. How much money do I make while sleeping? The question came out before I could stop it. A pause. Excuse me. Interest. Daily interest. How much money generates automatically while I'm doing nothing? At current market performance, your trust generates approximately $11,000 per day. That's accounting for compound interest, dividend reinvestment, and... I stopped listening. $11,000 a day. I made that in 4 months at the hardware store. Mr. Turner? Can I call you back? I need to think. Of course. Though I should mention, the trust has been generating funds in a holding account for several years. You currently have approximately $8 million in liquid assets earning minimal interest. We should discuss moving those funds into more productive vehicles. $8 million just sitting there, waiting, while I'd been clipping coupons. After we hung up, I sat on my thrift store couch and did something I hadn't done in years. I cried. Not from sadness or joy, but from the sheer overwhelming weight of discovering my entire life had been built on incomplete information. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. I left some books at your place. Can I pick them up this weekend? Not how are you? Not I miss you. Just logistics. I stared at the message for a long time before typing back, sure, Saturday afternoon works. She responded immediately, thanks, I'll be quick. Marcus will wait in the car. Of course he would. Marcus, with his car dealerships and his confidence and his complete ignorance that the man he'd displaced could buy and sell his entire business without noticing the expense. I looked around my tiny apartment, at the life I'd built with nothing but effort and integrity, and made a decision. I wasn't going to tell Sarah about the money. Not now, maybe not ever. If she came back, it would be for the right reasons. And if she didn't come back, then at least I'd know the truth about what we'd had. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, calculating. With $11,000 generated daily, I could help Mrs. Chun fix her ancient HVAC system that she'd been limping along for 3 years. I could pay off Derek's student loans. He'd mentioned them once, the weight of them, how they'd pushed his wedding back another year. I could fund the community center's after-school program that was always scrambling for supplies. Or I could buy a sports car and a penthouse and prove Sarah had made the biggest mistake of her life. The thought was tempting. God, it was tempting. At 2 a.m, I got up and opened my laptop, started researching. Not sports cars or luxury homes, but foundations, charitable trusts, anonymous giving. My father had hidden his wealth out of fear it would corrupt. Maybe the answer wasn't flaunting it or hiding it, but using it in ways that didn't define me. By dawn, I had a plan. Not a complete one, but the outline of who I might become. It started with calling Rebecca Chin back and having a very specific conversation about discretion and purpose. It started with not being the rich man, just being a good man who happened to have resources. Sarah was scheduled to arrive on Saturday at 2. I cleaned the apartment, though it didn't need much cleaning. Packed her books in a box. Included a bookmark she'd left in one of them, marking her place in a romance novel about a woman who chose security over passion and learned to regret it. The irony wasn't lost on me. She knocked at exactly 2. When I opened the door, she looked different. Polished. Her hair was professionally styled. Her clothes designer labels I recognized from store windows I'd never entered. Marcus's influence was written all over her. Hi. Her smile was awkward, guilty. Thanks for doing this. No problem. Everything's in the box by the door. She picked it up, glanced inside, then looked back at me. Really looked at me, like she was seeing me for the first time in months. How are you doing? Fine. Working. Living. The usual. I heard you picked up extra shifts. Who told her that? Derek, probably. They'd been friends first. Yeah. Saving up. The lie came easily because it had been true for so long. For what? I shrugged. Future. You know how it is. Something flickered in her expression. Regret? Doubt? Or just awkwardness at standing in the doorway of a life she'd abandoned. I should go. Marcus is waiting, right? Wouldn't want to keep him. She hesitated at the threshold. Josh, I really am sorry about how things ended. You deserve someone who appreciates what you... Sarah. I stopped her gently. It's okay. You made your choice. I hope you're happy. I am. She said it too quickly. Good. After she left, I sat on my couch holding nothing, the apartment feeling emptier than it had in years. My phone buzzed. Rebecca Chin. Following up on our call from yesterday. Mr. Turner? I've prepared the preliminary documents for the charitable foundation we discussed. I'll need you to come in and review them, select board members, establish giving criteria. Can it be anonymous? The giving? Absolutely. Many of our clients prefer discretion. Then let's do it. I have some people in mind who could use help, starting with Mrs. Chen's HVAC system, and Derek's student loans, and a community center that deserved more than hand-me-down sports equipment. I was rich. I was heartbroken. But I was still the same person who'd spent 6 years explaining the difference between deck stains because it mattered that people got it right. Money couldn't change that. I wouldn't let it. The meeting with Rebecca Chen took place in an office tower downtown, the kind with marble lobbies and security guards who looked like they could bench press sedans. I felt like an imposter walking through those glass doors in my off-the-rack khakis and department store shirt, carrying a backpack instead of a briefcase. Mr. Turner. Rebecca stood when I entered her office, extending a hand. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe 35, with sharp eyes that seemed to calculate net worth at a glance. Thank you for coming in. Her office overlooked the city, floor-to-ceiling windows framing buildings I'd only ever seen from ground level. There was abstract art on the walls worth more than my annual salary. My old annual salary, I corrected mentally, and furniture that looked uncomfortable but probably cost thousands. This is overwhelming, I admitted, sitting across from her. That's normal. She opened a tablet, pulling up documents. Most people who inherit significant wealth feel disoriented initially. Your case is particularly unusual given the length of time the trust was kept from you. 7 years. Yes, your uncle explained the circumstances. Your father's conditions were unconventional. She studied me. May I speak candidly? Please. Most people in your position would have been destroyed by sudden wealth at 18. They'd have bought cars they couldn't drive safely, houses they couldn't maintain, and friends who only cared about their bank account. Your father's paranoia might have actually saved you from that fate. By letting me think I was poor? By letting you become someone wealth couldn't corrupt because you'd already formed your identity without it. She pulled up a portfolio breakdown. Now, let's discuss what you have and what you want to do with it. The numbers on the screen were staggering. Real estate holdings across 6 states. Stock portfolios diversified across emerging markets and established companies. Bonds, mutual funds, even a small percentage in cryptocurrency my father had somehow predicted would matter. The $8 million in liquid assets is generating 0.7% interest in its current account, Rebecca explained. That's roughly $1,500 per day in completely passive income, but it's inefficient. We should move it. How much should I move into a charitable foundation? She blinked. I'm sorry. The foundation we discussed on the phone. For anonymous giving. How much should I allocate to that? Most clients start with 1 to 5% of their liquid assets for philanthropic ventures. 20 million. Rebecca's professional composure cracked slightly. That's a quarter of your liquid assets. Is there a problem? No, it's just... She collected herself. Most people in your position focus first on personal security. Homes, vehicles, lifestyle upgrades. Philanthropy typically comes later. I have a home. I have a vehicle. My lifestyle is fine. Mr. Turner, you live in a 400-square-foot studio apartment and drive a car with a failing transmission. Respectfully, your lifestyle could use some upgrading. Can you set up the foundation or not? She smiled then, something genuine breaking through the professional mask. I can absolutely set it up. I'll just need you to establish guidelines for giving criteria, select trustees, and determine oversight structure. We spent the next 2 hours building the framework. The Turner Foundation, though I insisted my name not appear anywhere public, would focus on small, immediate needs that fell through cracks. HVAC repairs for elderly residents. Medical bill assistance for families hit by sudden illness. Student loan payoffs for young people drowning in debt. Nothing flashy. Nothing that required buildings with my name on them. You understand this won't get you recognition, Rebecca said as we finalized documents. Anonymous giving doesn't come with galas or tax write-offs or your name in the paper. Good. Most wealthy people want legacy. I want to be useful. She studied me for a long moment. Your father would either be very proud or very disturbed by what you're doing. Probably both. Before I left, she handed me a credit card. Black metal, surprisingly heavy. This is connected to a discretionary account with $1 million. For personal expenses. Buy yourself some decent furniture at minimum. I pocketed the card, knowing I probably wouldn't use it. The furniture in my apartment had stories. The couch came from a neighbor who'd moved across country. The bookshelf I'd built myself from scrap wood and YouTube tutorials. Money could buy better, but it couldn't buy the meaning embedded in those objects. That evening, I returned to my apartment to find Mrs. Chun standing in the hallway, looking distressed. Her door was open, and the sound of dripping water echoed into the corridor. Joshua, thank goodness. My kitchen sink just exploded. Water everywhere. I called the landlord, but it's after hours and... Let me look. The sink had indeed exploded, or more accurately, the pipe beneath it had finally given up after decades of service. Water pooled on her floor, seeping into cabinets. I'll need to shut off your water main and replace this pipe, I said, assessing the damage. It's going to take a few hours. I can't afford a plumber right now. Her voice trembled. My pension check doesn't come until next week. I could have told her then. Could have revealed that I could pay for every repair her apartment would ever need without noticing the expense. Instead, I said what I'd always said, "Don't worry about it, Mrs. Chun. I've got supplies in my apartment. No charge." She protested, as she always did, and I deflected, as I always did, and 2 hours later her sink was fixed and she was pressing Tupperware containers of homemade dumplings into my hands as payment. Walking back to my apartment with those dumplings, I felt the weight of the black credit card in my pocket. $1 million for personal expenses. I could hire someone to fix Mrs. Chen's sink. Could hire a property management company to maintain the entire building. Could solve every small problem in this complex with a phone call. But then I'd just be a rich man throwing money at problems. I'd be Marcus buying solutions instead of providing them. The next morning at work, Derek cornered me by the lumber section. "Dude, Sarah came by yesterday asking about you." My stomach dropped. "What did you tell her?" "That you picked up extra shifts seemed fine, hadn't mentioned her." "Was that wrong?" "No, that's perfect." "She looked weird about it. Like she expected you to be more broken up." "Maybe I'm over it." Derek snorted. "You were planning to propose. Nobody gets over that in a week." He was right, of course. I wasn't over it. Every morning I woke up reaching for her side of the bed before remembering she'd chosen a different bed in a different life. Every evening I caught myself about to text her about small, stupid things. Funny customers, weird news stories, the way the sunset hit the buildings downtown. "She made her choice," I said finally. "I'm making mine." "Which is what?" "Working retail forever." The question hung in the air. Derek meant it casually, but it touched the central tension now dominating my life. What was my choice? I had the resources to do literally anything. Travel the world. Start a business. Go back to school for that engineering degree I'd once dreamed about. Instead, I was here, restocking screws and explaining to homeowners why their DIY electrical work was going to burn their house down. "I like it here," I said, surprised to realize it was true. "It's honest work. It's minimum wage work. Money isn't everything." Derek gave me a look. Easy to say when you're not drowning in student loan debt. This was my opening. I could tell him right now that his loans would be paid off by the end of the month. That the Turner Foundation's first act would be clearing his debt so he could marry his girlfriend without that weight crushing them. "How much do you owe?" I asked instead. 42,000. Might as well be 42 million at the rate I'm paying it off. He shrugged, trying to play it casual, but I could see the weight of it in his shoulders. "Anyway, customer needs help with tile. Talk later." I watched him walk away, calculating. $42,000. I made that in 4 days of passive interest. Derek would spend the next decade paying it off, the debt dictating every major life decision he made. The unfairness of it made my chest tight. During my lunch break, I called Rebecca Chin. "The foundation. When can we start distributing funds?" "I filed the preliminary paperwork, but formal establishment takes 3 to 4 weeks. "Why? Can I give money before then?" "Personal gifts." "You can do whatever you want with your money, Mr. Turner. Though gifts over $15,000 require tax documentation." "Then I want to give Derek Morrison $42,000. Today. Anonymous. Make it look like a scholarship or grant or something." "Mr. Turner." Can you do it or not? A pause. I can structure it as an anonymous gift from a charitable organization. It'll take a day to process. But you should know, anonymous gifts above certain thresholds raise questions. People wonder about the source. Then make it a grant for dedicated retail workers. Say he was selected randomly. That's not how grants typically work. Then figure out how to make it work. That's what I'm paying you for, right? Another pause, longer this time. Yes, sir. I'll have the documentation ready by tomorrow. After we hung up, I sat in my car eating a sandwich that tasted like cardboard, wondering if this was what being rich felt like. Having the power to change lives with a phone call. It should have felt good. Instead, it felt complicated, like I was playing God with other people's futures without their knowledge or consent. But Derek deserved better than a decade of debt. And I had the power to give it to him. That had to count for something. Derek got the notification 3 days later. I was restocking paint supplies when he came running through the store, his phone clutched in his shaking hand. Josh! Holy shit! You're not going to believe this. Customers turned to stare as he crashed into me, nearly knocking over a display of paint rollers. His face was flushed, tears streaming down his cheeks. What happened? Are you okay? My student loans. They're gone. All of them. There was this grant, the National Retail Workers Education Relief Fund, and they randomly selected me and paid off everything. He was laughing and crying simultaneously, words tumbling out faster than I could process them. $42,000. Just gone. Like it never existed. I forced surprise into my expression. That's incredible, man. Incredible? It's impossible. It's a miracle. I called Jenny and she started crying, and now we can actually plan the wedding without worrying about debt and maybe even save for a house. And he grabbed my shoulders. I can breathe, Josh. For the first time in 8 years, I can actually breathe. Watching his joy, feeling his hands on my shoulders and seeing the weight lift from him, I understood something fundamental about money. It wasn't about what you bought. It was about what you freed people from. I'm happy for you, I said, and meant it with every fiber of my being. That night, Rebecca called with an edge in her voice. The Derek Morrison gift is raising eyebrows. What kind of eyebrows? The kind that belong to people who verify grant organizations. The National Retail Workers Education Relief Fund doesn't exist. I had to create it, file expedited nonprofit paperwork, and backdate documentation. It cost $15,000 in legal fees and several favors from attorneys who specialize in rapid entity establishment. But it's done. It's done. But Mr. Turner, this isn't sustainable. You can't spontaneously create charitable organizations every time you want to help someone. Why not? I have the money. Because it draws attention. Because people investigate large gifts. Because... She stopped, recalibrating. Look, if you want to help people, we need to do this properly. The Turner Foundation should be operational in 2 weeks. After that, we can establish legitimate grant programs with clear criteria. 2 weeks is too long. For what? I thought about Mrs. Chen's ancient HVAC system, rattling and wheezing through another summer. About the single mother in 3B whose car had died and who was now taking 3 buses to get to work. About the community center's after-school program that was about to cut hours because they couldn't afford staffing. There are people who need help now. Mr. Turner, wealth is a marathon, not a sprint. If you want to make lasting impact. Rebecca, I've been running a marathon my entire life. I've been poor. I've watched people I care about struggle with problems that money could solve in an instant. Now I have money, and you're telling me I have to wait for paperwork. Silence on the line. Then, what do you want to do? I want to fix things. Immediately. Quietly. That's not how charitable giving works. Then forget charitable giving. Personal gifts. Anonymous donations. Whatever legal structure lets me help people without waiting. Another pause. I'll draw up documents for a discretionary gift program. It'll allow you to distribute up to $100,000 per month in personal gifts without triggering complex tax implications. Beyond that, we'll need different structures. $100,000 per month? It's actually quite modest given your wealth. You could be distributing millions. I thought about that. $100,000 every month. My entire life's earnings to date, renewable every 30 days. Let's start there, I said. Over the next week, I became a ghost in my own neighborhood. I'd see a problem. A broken air conditioner, a struggling business, a kid who needed tutoring they couldn't afford, and I'd make it disappear. Not personally. Through Rebecca and her network of attorneys and accountants who specialized in making money move invisibly. Mrs. Chun woke up to find a voucher for a complete HVAC replacement from a company she'd never heard of. Valid for immediate service. Fully paid. She called me crying, convinced it was a scam. I helped her verify it was real, never mentioning that I'd arranged the whole thing. The single mother in 3B found an envelope taped to her door containing keys to a used Honda Civic, 3 years old, low mileage, titled in her name, with a note saying she'd been selected for a local charity program. The community center received an anonymous donation covering their entire year's budget plus funding for expansion. I was burning through my monthly allowance like water, and it felt better than anything I'd ever bought for myself. But Sarah was watching. I didn't know this until I ran into her at the grocery store 2 weeks after she'd picked up her books. She was in the organic produce section, somewhere she'd never shopped when we were together because it was too expensive, and Marcus was with her, looking bored while she contemplated artisanal lettuce. Josh! She seemed genuinely surprised. What are you doing here? I looked down at my basket. Generic cereal, store-brand milk, the same cheap staples I'd always bought. Shopping? In this neighborhood? This store is crazy expensive. I was nearby. The lie came easily. I'd driven 15 minutes out of my way specifically because this store had the good coffee Mrs. Chin liked, and I'd planned to leave it outside her door as an anonymous gift. Marcus looked up from his phone, assessing me with the casual disdain of someone who knew he'd won. You're the ex Sarah's told me about you. All good things, I hope. She said you were a hard worker. The way he said it made hard worker sound like an insult, like someone who needed to work hard because they had nothing else going for them. Sarah touched his arm. Marcus, don't. What? I'm making conversation. He looked me up and down. Hardware store, right? That must be fulfilling. It has its moments. I'm sure. He turned back to his phone, already bored with me. Dismissal that stung more than any insult could have. Sarah's eyes met mine, and I saw something there. Not regret exactly, but a flicker of curiosity. You look good, Josh. Different somehow. Same old me. Are you seeing anyone? The question surprised us both. Marcus's head snapped up from his phone, and I saw a flash of something cross his face. Insecurity, maybe. The sudden realization that his girlfriend was asking about her ex's love life in front of him. Not yet. Focusing on myself. I shifted the basket. I should go. Good seeing you both. I made it 3 steps before Sarah called after me. Josh, wait. I heard something weird. Someone told me Derek got his student loans paid off by some grant. Did you hear about that? My heart hammered. Yeah, he mentioned it. Lucky guy. Really lucky. Like impossibly lucky. She was studying me now with an intensity one remembered from when we'd first met. And Mrs. Chun got a new air conditioner. And that single mom in our building got a car. All in the same week. All anonymous gifts. Small world, I managed. Or a small neighborhood with someone playing fairy godmother. She stepped closer, leaving Marcus by the lettuce. What's going on, Josh? People are generous sometimes. Not that generous. Not all at once. Not to people who all happen to live in the same building as my ex-boyfriend. Her voice dropped. Did you win the lottery or something? I could have told her then. Could have laid it all out. The trust, my father's invention, the $83 million that had been mine all along. Could have watched her face transform as she realized what she'd walked away from. Instead, I said, Sarah, you left because you thought I couldn't provide the life you wanted. If things have changed, it shouldn't matter to you anymore. But it does matter. She glanced back at Marcus, who was watching us with poorly concealed anxiety. I need to know. Why? So you can calculate whether you made a mistake. I kept my voice gentle, not angry. You chose security. You chose certainty. Those are valid choices. But they were your choices. Josh, I hope you're happy with Marcus. I genuinely do. But whatever's happening in my life now, it's separate from us. We're done. Remember? I left before she could respond, my hands steady despite my racing pulse. In the parking lot, I sat in my rattling Honda and called Rebecca. I need to move, I said, somewhere new. And I need to expand the foundation's reach beyond this neighborhood. People are noticing patterns. I've been waiting for this call, she said. I have properties for you to look at, and we should discuss scaling your charitable work properly. What you're doing is admirable, but you're right. It's becoming visible. That weekend, I looked at apartments. Real apartments with square footage and dishwashers and views. I felt like an anthropologist studying a foreign culture. The real estate agent kept pointing out amenities. Heated bathroom floors, smart home systems, concierge services that seemed designed for a different species of human. What do you do for work? She asked as we toured a penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows. I work at a hardware store. She blinked, clearly recalculating her commission expectations. This unit is $8,000 per month. I can afford it. Of course, She recovered her professional smile. What do you think? I thought about Mrs. Chun making dumplings in her tiny kitchen. About Derek's joy at being free from debt. About every small human moment that had happened in my cramped studio apartment. It's nice, I said, but it's not me. In the end, I rented a modest 2-bedroom in a different neighborhood. Nice enough to have space, normal enough that I didn't feel like an imposter. I kept my job at the hardware store, though I reduced my hours. And the Turner Foundation officially launched with a proper structure, clear criteria, and a mission statement that read, supporting dignity through meeting immediate needs. 6 months later, Derek got married. I stood as his best man, watching him marry Jenny in a backyard ceremony paid for with savings they'd accumulated once his debt vanished. During his toast, he thanked whatever cosmic force had given him a second chance. I raised my glass and said nothing. Sarah sent me a text that night. Saw Derek's wedding photos. You looked happy. Are you? I stared at the message for a long time before typing, getting there. She didn't respond, and I didn't expect her to. Marcus had proposed to her the month before. Derek had told me, uncomfortable but feeling I should know. The ring was expensive. The life she'd chosen was secure. And I was genuinely happy for her, in the way you can be happy for someone who made a choice that hurt you but was right for them. My father had been terrified that money would corrupt me. Uncle Thomas had been terrified that hiding it would destroy me. They'd both been partially right and partially wrong. Money hadn't corrupted me because I'd learned who I was without it. But knowing I'd had it all along while struggling had changed me too, in ways I was still understanding. I wasn't the same Josh who'd sat in that coffee shop learning his life had been a lie. But I wasn't entirely different either. I still fixed Mrs. Chen's plumbing. Still explained deck stain options to confused homeowners. Still drove a car that rattled over potholes. But now I also funded scholarships and paid medical bills and kept a running list of small, invisible ways to help people who'd never know where the help came from. Sarah had left me for a rich man, not knowing I was richer than he'd ever be. But the real revelation wasn't about money. It was about realizing that the life I'd built while poor had been more valuable than anything wealth could buy. And that was worth more than $83 million. Though the $83 million didn't hurt either. If you enjoyed Josh's story of hidden wealth, heartbreak, and finding himself, please consider subscribing to our channel.